Hey guys, so welcome to Queen's Concussion Podcast. I'm your co-host Zach Toffmeyer alongside Joel Burgess, and we're part of the Queen's Concussion Awareness Committee, or QCAC for short. So for those new to joining, QCAC is a club that strives to promote the topic of concussions, specifically trying to break the stigma in sports. And as many of you know, in sports, athletes tend to hide their symptoms of concussions and play through it. So this podcast was started really to try and take a look behind the experiences that athletes have and hopefully to make other athletes actually feel comfortable talking about their concussions and the symptoms they are experiencing. And with that, I'll pass it over to Joel to get things started with our new guest.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joel. To introduce our guest today, we have Bruce Oldham. He's an MMA fighter and a skier. In skiing, he participates in disciplines like slopestyle and big air. And he's undefeated in his amateur MMA career with a 1-0 record so far, being ranked 14th out of 33 among Canadian amateur flyweights. And he's got a dope YouTube channel and Instagram account where he posts clips of him shredding and stuff like that. So do you want to introduce yourself, Bruce?
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I'm really stoked to be on here. And like you said, too, it's really good to bring some awareness to concussions and stuff like that, because especially in like the two sports that I'm involved in heavily, it's something that's not often like talked about seriously. So super good to be here. Want to know, I mean, in amateur, that's pretty easy to be undefeated when you only have one fight, but I'll take it. I do a lot of freestyle skiing. It's kind of like my main sport and main, I guess it's my main job now, which is really awesome to say. Compete and travel around like the world for the most part, doing World Cups and events like that for freestyle skiing, and obviously creating YouTube content, social content, and all that other good stuff. But yeah, that's about it. I'm 5'3". I'm definitely on the shorter scale, but you know, it's good. And I mean, really stoked to be on the podcast with you guys.
That sounds great, man. Well, do you want to first start us off from the beginning and just tell us a little bit with your journey in skiing, you know, how you fell in love with the sport and, you know, what really drives you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, for me, I like growing up, I was always like, again, a smaller child, and I was like really into sports, and like I always wanted to like prove to myself and like to the other people that like I could keep up with everybody else. So growing up, I did like pretty much every sport possible, soccer, hockey, you name it. Like obviously the classic Canadian is hockey. So I did hockey like to like grade 10, playing like single A and double A and stuff. But I was always really small, so I just get body checked and like have to get back up and get body checked to get back up. But when I was I used to always go on family ski trips and stuff like that. In like grade 10, I started skiing park. I got really into it out of nowhere. And then was going on weekends, and then started to pick up the sport from there. Joined a like local team and would train every weekend, and then started doing a couple contests. And I don't know, kind of just became the one thing that like really clicked for me, and I picked it up super fast. And I like the fact that I was like better than most of my friends at it, and like started like learning new tricks and everything really fast. And like, you know, you land something new, or whenever you're progressing, and whether it's a sport or any discipline in life, like you kind of gravitate towards that. So that's what happened with me with skiing, and I kind of ran with it. I've been doing it for like 7-8 years now. And yeah, no, it's been amazing. I mean, to get to the point where we are now and my career and everything like that has been a really cool thing. I mean, I went to university and stuff like you guys, ended up dropping out to continue skiing because it was like trying to juggle both, and it was like it's very time consuming to travel and compete full time and also try to go to school full time. And I started
definitely.
Exactly. And I figured for me, I personally could go, like I could probably go back to school anytime, but I mean, there's somewhat of a lifespan on how long I can huck myself up like 60, 70-foot jumps and get away with it. So figured I would go do that for a couple of years.
And so like with like your insane background of like doing skiing so long, obviously like you've probably sustained your fair share of injuries. Like with that being said, like I did a little bit of research before this, and 20 to 42% of the injuries sustained in skiing has to do with your head. And so like, how has your experience been with kind of head injuries, or have you been diagnosed with a concussion?
So again, comes back to like what you said about the stigma and everything about it. And I personally, like I have hit my head quite hard a lot of the time skiing. I've never fully got diagnosed with concussion because I normally especially when I was growing up and I was younger, I wouldn't go get it checked out or anything like that. But I've had a lot of friends that have had some really, really bad head injuries as well, like where they have been on serious concussion protocol. And me personally, I probably had like 3 to 4 like pretty serious ones that I haven't like taken. Like when I was younger, I didn't take them as seriously. Like I would sometimes take a couple days off, or maybe I'd take one day off and go skiing the next day. Nowadays I'm very on top of it, but yeah, it's very easy. I mean, obviously for me, like I'm pretty good with the helmet thing. I'm wearing a helmet when I'm in the park, obviously when I'm doing big tricks and everything. For the most part, I would say 99% of the time I'm wearing a helmet. And it's usually, I mean, all the times I've hit my head really hard for the most part are being like, when you're just being complacent on the ski hill. Like most times I'm not even doing a big trick or something. I'm like, just not paying attention, skiing down fast and like catch an edge or something, or like doing a rail trick you've done a million times and you just catch. So wearing a helmet has definitely saved me like a ton of head injuries, and I can only imagine like how bad it would be without one. Yeah, and again, like I said, I've had a lot of friends that have hit their head quite hard with skiing, so it's definitely something that's like always in the back of your mind.
So you mentioned like a couple of injuries just then. Would you say that having any injuries kind of makes you like a little bit more hesitant when you're skiing? Because a couple of weeks ago, me and a couple of friends of mine, we went on a ski trip, and I was learning how to snowboard. That was like across a weekend, and by the end of like the third day, I just wanted to just gently go down the hills because I was so like I've been falling over so many times. I'm sure when you were learning, you know all about that. So just by the end of it, I was completely beaten, and I just didn't want to really just risk it anymore. Would you say like that's any experience like that with you? You know, with so many injuries like that?
Yeah, so for me, like again, injuries are part of the sport, and you kind of come to realize that there's some athletes that are able to overcome it more, and some athletes that aren't. For me, building like I like over the years, I've kind of grown like a good pathway for me to regain confidence for tricks and stuff like that. It's crazy because like a backflip, just a single backflip, sometimes scares me more than doing like a double cork or like even a triple cork, which is crazy, but like
nuts.
Like, yeah, it is nuts. Yeah. But like, I mean, I just don't do a lot of backflips. I don't like the feeling of going straight over my head. I mean, I've taken a couple slams when I was young, and I think that kind of like stuck with me. Obviously now, like I know how to overcome it, and I go back and like do a couple here and there, but still like, I'd rather do like a dub 10 than a backflip or a double backflip any day of the week. But a lot of it just comes to like putting the right steps in place and building the confidence up. I mean, you like there's a fine line between pushing it safely and like, you know, you pass that threshold and it's like, okay, like you could be like just fine to like overcome that fear and the confidence and go through with confidence and do the trick anyways. But you never know. It's like it's really hard to find that fine line, because you get people that are like very, very, like you said, they're the exact opposite of what you said, where they have just 100% confidence that everything's going to be fine. And then they're the guys that are always getting injured because they're just doing things way out of their ability and their skill level. You're meant to be scared for a reason. Like your body instills that fear and that whole idea of like fight or flight, because, you know, it's a safety reaction. And I guess the biggest thing to figure out is like, how far do you push that before it's getting too dangerous where you get injured? Yeah. And I think I've been pretty good with that over the years. Like I haven't had any major injuries, like including knees or anything like that. Being like an older athlete, when I was young, I was a little degenerate. I was like dirt biking and stuff. I broke both my wrists and a bunch of things like that. But nowadays, like, I mean, I found that fine line, and like, you know what you're comfortable with. Obviously it's still scary, but like, you know, you kind of say to yourself, like, okay, like what if everything goes right, instead of like everybody always sits at the top of the jump or like whatever the feature, and they're like thinking about all the ways they could get hurt or all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah. That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a while to do it, but like, for me, a new trick or something like that that's really scary, I kind of like, you know, you get in the present moment, and you kind of just like take an opposite approach where it's like, okay, what if everything goes right? I like that a lot. I find that works. But again, there's a certain point where like, if you just like, okay, I'm going to do a like quad backflip off this 2-foot jump and then just go send it. That's so.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely got to know like the fine line between like confidence and knowing your own limits for sure.
Yeah.
Would you say in like with like your snowboarding and skiing buddies, like what would you say like the atmosphere like is regarding concussions? Like does that ever come up in conversations? Is that something you guys talk about, or is that something that's just like brushed off?
No, it's definitely talked about. It's getting talked about more and more. And like back in the day, like I would say even like 5-6 years ago, 10 years ago, like wearing a helmet wasn't a cool thing to do. which again is like, it's pretty stupid. And even in street skiing where like, you're hitting urban rails and stuff in like the city or for video parts and stuff, people don't necessarily want to wear a helmet because it's more core or it doesn't like look as good or whatever, like the excuse you make. But nowadays the tide's like starting to shift to the point where it's like, okay, like you like realistically helmets save lives and like you definitely need to wear it, especially on big park jumps and obviously big street features and stuff like that. And I think people are starting to take it more seriously. Obviously, like there's a lot of people I know that like will hit their head and they'll go out skiing the next day. And then there's a lot of people I know that have like that, or like people like me that have seen like other friends and other athletes do that. And it actually like have serious implications on their career and stuff because they've hit their head too many times where they've had to either take a season off or they've had to quit or they have like, they're like at the point where it's like, okay, well, if you hit your head hard again, like you like the doctor's going to be like, you shouldn't ski.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's starting to become more popular, that notion of concussions and obviously being safe and avoiding injuries like that, but still not near where it should be for the sport. Cause it's a very heavy injury, like heavy sport.
And you just said that your like some of your friends sometimes like actually participate in like the jumps even when they have a concussion or like some sort of head trauma. Do you find that like yourself or like is that a common theme to kind of just like play through the pain?
Yeah, I personally, I'm a victim of that. I do that too. Like I try not to. Like the other day, I was in Australia on the airbag like 2 weeks ago, and I hit my head like pretty hard on the airbag, and like we had like 2 more days of training left, and I was like, oh, I really want to keep training. Went up again like for the afternoon and hit it one more time. And I was like, okay, like that's way too much, and I had to take I took the next like 4 or 5 days off.
Yeah.
Because and it's something you want to push through and you want to make the most out of it, but it's something that's like you as like being a more responsible human being now, like you really need to take like note of it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like you're like, let's say you have the X Games coming up and you just hit your head pretty hard like 2 days before it. It's a pretty big like thing to say no to. Like you can't participate in the X Games for something you actually can't see, which is why it's such a like a prominent thing that people still brush it off. And so, like, when you are doing the actual competitions, when you're
I was just gonna say, like, and you might feel like pretty good, like even 2 days later, but like if you have another big head hit, like within that that time span, like it's really not good.
Exactly. And the actual like competitions, do you have anyone spotting for like concussions or anything that will like, or anyone that will like take you out if they suspect you of any like head related issue?
No. So it would all be athlete, obviously like discretion. Usually like your coach, like if your coach knew you hit your head pretty hard or something like that, they would be like, okay, like I don't want you to compete or anything like that. Obviously there's ski patrol and, usually medical staff on site for like the events.
Okay.
But again, like if like normally people will crash and will fall, they'll get back up. Maybe their head hurts a little bit, but they're like, okay, I'm fine. I'm going to go keep training. It depends. Yeah.
Cause like I did do some, like, I looked up like kind of like how, the protocol works. And it did say that there was, or it said that some sort of figure would remove anyone from play if they suspected a concussion, but like,
it's very enforced. Like I would say it's never been enforced.
Yeah, that's not great.
Like obviously, if you get fully knocked out and like the ski patrol take you down, like you're not going to go back out and compete. But like if you hit your head the day before or something and you like felt off and like you went up to the hill that day, like nobody's going to say like no, you can't compete. Like they wouldn't even know. They wouldn't know better. Yeah. Okay,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so now moving kind of away from your skiing career, kind of into MMA. So what's it like being in the amateur MMA? Like what kind of like pushed you to go there?
Well, for me, I was actually in school and I was like, it was like before ski season started and I was looking for something to like, keep me away from like partying and stuff like that. I was like, I need some kind of physical activity to like burn my energy. And I got into MMA and I absolutely loved it because like physically, like you're pushing yourself physically, mentally super hard. And it was a really good outlet for me. And I also fell in love with like the sport, like learning like all the ins and outs. There's tons of, it's very, very intricate sport. And I enjoy that a lot. And yeah, I mean, it kind of just went from there. Obviously, I'm pretty new into the scene for amateur MMA. Like I wouldn't be the expert on it. But I do know like quite a bit. I've been doing it for like 4 years, like training like relatively like in the summer, like it's kind of harder when I'm traveling, but in the summer I'm training like 5 to 6 days a week, like 2 times a day easily. But yeah, no, it's super good. And like, again, as I'm sure you guys know, like you get different MMA gyms, you get different sparring partners, different training partners. Right. Some gyms are known for like training super hard physically where like, a bunch of the athletes are getting injured all times and stuff like that. And then there's some like gyms that are definitely taking a more like smarter approach to it, to avoid, again, injuries and head injuries as well. So kind of depends on like where you train and where you put yourself, and, finding the right group of people to push it.
Yeah.
Nice. And in those like sparring like matches and training you mentioned, like, how hurt do you usually get in that? Like how intense and physical do those usually get? Like a day after, I usually like, what, man, I got to take a day off that sparring match. Just I got to take a break after that one.
No, again, like so like I said, like there's some gyms that'll be like that, like some gyms like more of an old school mentality too, same as skiing. But you'll have people that are like, some guys get knocked out in training and then they'll go train the next day. Nowadays, it's a lot less content, a lot less, like it doesn't happen as much nowadays. But like for my gym, for instance, like when we spar, like obviously when we're training, we have sparring once a week on Sunday, maybe twice a week, depending on the week. But it's usually pretty light sparring. Like you're never going to get like seriously hit or anything like that, where like you're not going to have like, if you have a headache at the end of sparring, it's usually way too hard and you shouldn't have gone that hard. Yeah. Usually it's more like it's very light and stuff like that. Every once in a while, maybe once a month, you'll like go with a sparring partner, just like, especially if you have a fight coming up, you'll go a bit harder. But again, it's like, it's more just working on technique, timing, and all that stuff, instead of just trying to go there and just beat each other up, because again, that's where it doesn't make any sense. Like you're not getting better as an athlete. Your technique's not getting better. Your timing's not getting better. And realistically, you're just, again, you're getting injuries and stuff. And I've had people like when I'm training at MMA gyms that spar and train way too hard, like where like, you start training with them or like sparring with them and they're trying to like pretty much knock you out. And it's like, okay, well now not to train with that guy ever again, or you just leave.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's like, it just doesn't benefit anybody.
And so like just the one that you previously had in your cage match, or even just like the sparring matches that you've said, like the kickboxing matches, do any like throughout these fights, like you just kind of like forget any parts of the fight or have any like blank spots?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I mean, again, it's a lot of adrenaline, so you kind of like your body, you just kind of go through the motions. But yeah, no, I've had a couple blank spots for sure. Like you just get really into it. Never like getting hit and having a blank spot, from physical contact. I mean, again, I'm pretty new into the sport, and like all my like MMA and kickboxing fights, like I've been pretty dominant, so I haven't got hit very much in them. But yeah, no, definitely you get in the moment. And like, again, some of the fights are pretty, like some people do get knocked out quite aggressively, in the actual fighting. Again, in training, if you're around people that are training and knocking each other out, then you should definitely go to a different gym.
Yeah. And like when you're in the actual fight, do you feel most of the hits to head? Or is there just too much adrenaline? You kind of just don't really even know.
Like nothing. Like relatively, like
that's crazy.
Relatively for me, like when I'm like, yeah, like you feel very like you don't really notice it. Yeah, like even things like, you check a leg kick or you get hit with a leg kick or a body kick or something, like in the moment, barely feel it. The next day, you'll be like, "Ooh, I'm pretty tender. I wonder what that was from." And you're like, "Oh yeah, it was that." But like in the moment, no, definitely not.
Damn.
So kind of moving on from that, I know, like you said, you've been kind of dominant in all your fights, so good on you for that. But like when the adrenaline kind of comes down, how do you feel like cognitively, like in your head? How do you feel? Like, do you feel a little foggy, a little dizzy, or where are you at? Like once that adrenaline comes down?
No, I usually feel pretty good. Adrenaline comes down. Obviously, like you're still excited and everything like that, but usually I feel pretty good. I mean, obviously more from skiing in general. Like I've hit my head and like felt like exactly how you described, like multiple times, within a season, and it's one of those things where you have to judge it. Like obviously, it would be nice to have somebody to talk to and to like ask for a professional opinion on, but most of the times you don't have anybody. like even if we're just training at like our local hill or I'm training at a different hill or somebody, like it's more like up to me to make my own call the next day, like whether I want to go like skiing, or if I do go skiing, how hard I push it. Like I can go, for me, realistically at my level and a lot of the higher level athletes, we can go skiing and still train and be like 99% sure we're not going to fall and hit our head hard. Like very, very confident. Right. Like you can do like smaller tricks, you can work on easier stuff. But then it's like, I guess the personal decision of how hard you want to push it like the next day based on how you feel. And again, there's not usually somebody you can talk to about like what the best call would be.
Okay.
So after like these MMA fights, would you attribute that like lack of like concussive symptoms? Would you attribute that to like your like skill and like your dominance like in the fight, or is that just like you just don't feel that?
No,
like, in the fight, are you just not taking many hits?
Yeah, I would just say like it's because I'm relatively like on top of it in the fight and I'm not getting hit too much. Like I've had sparring sessions like where we sparred harder and I felt like that afterwards for sure. Like there's been times like throughout the summer and stuff where like every once in a while I'll get hit clean a couple times in sparring, like pretty good. And I'll be like driving home and I'll be like, okay, I got a good headache. Like that was too much. And then again, like, that's up to me for the next couple of days of training or sparring. Like maybe I'll sit out of those sparring sessions. I'll just do pad work or something, or I'll like take it easy for the week. Right. But yeah, no, for sure. I've had like experiences like that outside of the cage, just in training.
And you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but like after any of your fights or after like a rip on the hill, have you ever had to like, see a physician like specifically come up to you, like seeing a physician for your head, or is that not something that is usually
not your schedule? No.
And also, so like just before we recorded this, you were saying how you're going to be getting into like doing successive or like multiple days in a row of doing actual like fights.
Yeah.
With that being said, are you like, how does it work if you get injured?
Yeah, so that again, that's going to be up to me, and like obviously with MMA promotions and stuff like that. One of the biggest issues with amateur MMA is like a lot of the promotions don't talk between each other because there's a lot of different amateur promotions in like each region or whatever, or like the amateur promotions just don't generally care about like the athlete. Like in the UFC at a higher level, like you have a fight, they put you in a concussion protocol, they'll make sure you're out for a certain amount of time. Like they go through all the steps to make sure you're 100% ready.
Yeah.
But in amateurs, like you see a lot of kids that will get knocked out one week and then be back fighting the next week later. And like, obviously that's really not good. Yeah. And again, it depends on the promotion. Some promotions are more on top of it and better with it. Some promotions aren't at all. And then, you get somebody who's super stubborn. They want to be that tough kid. They'll get knocked out the week before. They'll go fight in a different amateur promotion the next week or something like that. So again, that comes down to like your own personal intelligence with concussions. Maybe there needs to be more, people need more awareness on like how serious it is, or people need to stop being so stubborn on like, just, I can do it anyways, I'm going to be fine. But yeah, you do see that happen. And like for me, like I was saying like earlier before we hopped on that I wanted to fight potentially like every other week this summer for amateur. That would be like if I had like pretty fit or like really dominant like fights, like where again like where I'm getting hit like very, very little, if at all. And then again, I have to make that personal call myself where it's like, okay, like that was a harder fight than I thought, and I definitely like it's not the right call to fight the next week or the week after.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and like just like how crazy that is coming down like from the UFC down to the amateur league, how much different that is, because
very different.
Like that's really scary to see. Like if someone's knocked out, they're not really ever checked on, and they're kind of just like put back in for a promotional offer, or they're just kind of like never really actually prioritized. It's more about the actual outcome rather than like their actual personal being, which is pretty scary. And like hockey used to be like that, and like football used to be like that, but now they're kind of moving away. But like hopefully like these amateur like leagues will begin to go with the flow too. But yeah, that's pretty scary.
For sure. And again, I think it's something that as it gets more popular, it'll be a little bit more regulated. But a lot of the time, like as you guys know, probably talking to other people in a podcast and stuff like that, a lot of the time it's the athlete that's really the problem. Like they're just too stubborn. Yeah. That's like 99% of the time I find that's like the biggest issue. Like the promotion, if you said, hey, like I got like knocked out the next week, like I don't like, it's not smart for me to fight, they'd be like, yeah, fine. like totally okay. But like most of the time the athlete's like, no, it'll be fine. I got it. Like it's all good.
Especially with any like money involved with it, they're obviously going to want to push through it. Like,
yeah. And dude, even like in most amateur promotions don't even pay most of the fighters. And like, they're just, they want to be the tough kid in the crowd. They want to be the tough guy. And like, yeah, it's one of those, it's one of those things that's like, again, very athlete based and personality based for that individual. Some people like just, again, like I said, they might not have the awareness of what concussions can do, or they just, again, are way too stubborn for their own good.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm a AT, like athletic therapist for like the Royal Military College rugby team, and all the time, like not even concussive related. Like I see people that get hurt, and I try to check up on them, and they keep just pushing me out. Oh, they just all they want to do is go back and play, and they know if they come and even just entertain the thought of coming out and checking on how they're doing, that might take them out the game. So people just want to keep getting back in there, and which is what significantly increases like your risk for injury. Like you mentioned earlier, if you have a concussion, then a couple of days later you hit your head again, or like nevertheless, like right after, then it's going to make a huge difference on like the actual impact of the concussion for sure.
Yeah, and for me, like my personality is very, very similar along those lines. And over the years, obviously, as I learned more about concussions and as I, grew up and like became a smarter individual, I've taken like a way more serious approach to like concussion-based or head-based injuries, where I really make sure I'm taking the time and stuff. But like again, for most like physical injuries for me outside of like head-based injuries, I generally like, for the most part, I'll push through it. Like it's just. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like again like last season I like fractured and bruised like both my heels, and I still had to I still competed for like the rest of the season like for 3 more months. But it was like one of those things where it's like personal. Yeah, you have to like weigh the pros and cons. But with like when it comes to head injuries, like nowadays I don't like I just make sure I take the time necessary.
And so like now kind of just going into like the general scheme of like just life in general, do you find that like you have many repercussions from any of these head injuries or no?
Me personally, no. But again, like I said, I've had friends that have had multiple head injuries, and like some of them have to wear glasses now. Some of them have been told by doctors that like they shouldn't be in the sport anymore because if they hit their head hard again, like it could be very, very serious. For me personally, I've had none yet, which I've been very lucky and grateful for. Again, I've been smart about it. I'm wearing my helmet like when I'm doing bigger tricks almost all the time anyways. But yeah, no, I definitely noticed it in other athletes for sure.
It definitely sounds like you're starting to taking concussions way more seriously, and I definitely respect you for that. Just as we start to wrap up now, is there any like sort of concluding remarks that you want to say to the fans?
Yeah, no, well, again, thanks for having me on, guys. I mean, I really appreciate like what you guys are trying to do. And it's something, like I said, as a younger athlete, like you kind of think you're invincible and you kind of push to the side. And it's something that like most people need to take more seriously. And if you're one of those people that's like, too stubborn for your own good, like you can push through some injuries, but head injuries are something that like, it's just not worth the risk. It's really not worth the risk. You want to be 60 and you want to be functioning and you want to be clear-headed and you want to be on top of everything. Like it's just that's one of the things that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. And like, just for like, I guess like just like the audience's information and yours, like CTE, one of the most common known or like at least popular head injuries that people like hear about in the news. It's like mainly from like subconcussive impacts. Also from like concussive impacts also do contribute to it, but a lot it's from is just like subconcussive, which is like pretty scary because like, as you said, like so many times, like it's just things that you don't really feel and like you don't really feel any repercussions afterwards. But like just like the added on continuous effect of them does have repercussions, which is pretty scary. But like obviously I am like this is great that you're very aware of concussions, that you're actually taking yourself out and understanding like their dangers that head injuries can pose on you. And so with that being said, thanks so much, Bruce, for taking the time today and coming on the podcast. Just love listening to your both your careers. Crazy how you do it, like extreme athlete here. And hopefully stay safe through your future endeavors. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, man.